What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about the S&P 500 index, SPX, at the request of the electrocutioner. I wrote SPX sell off. I forget what your question was, what your request was. Was it, am I thinking it's going to sell off, or was the question, what would I expect crypto to do if it sells off? I can't remember. So we'll go over both, and then just general price analysis as well as talking about the S&P versus Bitcoin specifically for Armakink. At the request of Armakink, you guys both actually requested SPX charts at like the same day. So I meant to do this one yesterday, but I felt like it would take more time getting its own video and everything like that. So I want to go over it now. Let's throw on the correlation coefficient here for the total crypto market cap, because I just want to see. I want to show, generally speaking, there is a correlation with crypto and the stock markets, right? Not always, but most of the time. On a monthly basis here, I mean, if we go to a daily, you can see you've got inverse and positive. For shorter amounts of time, you can see a bit of a fluctuation in the consistency of the correlation. But on a monthly basis, at large, you are very correlated. This is the correlation coefficient here. The closer you get to a 1, you can't get above a 1. The closer you get to a 1, that means you're directly correlated. As you get down to -1, that means you're inversely correlated, which would literally mean if one moves up, one moves down, right? Something like that. It'd be like if I compared the US dollar to the Chinese dollar. They're basically inversely correlated. Anyways, very correlated for most of its time. There are parts where it gets less correlated, but still largely correlated. Even above the 0 means you are more correlated than uncorrelated. There was this phase here where you were slightly uncorrelated or just very neutral, and then there's this phase here where you were not as directly correlated as you are most of the time. So let's actually go over those. I want to compare. I'm going to get rid of, I guess that won't really matter, will it? We'll shrink it down just for now. We can bring it up later, the RSI. We don't need it right now. I want to compare the total chart on a new price scale. That way we can see it with our eyes too. So we've got the correlation coefficient to tell us when we're correlated, and then we can actually see this correlation dynamic taking place with the actual price chart here. When we were losing correlation was right here, right? Crypto was moving up a lot. The S&P was actually moving up too. So I don't know how we were losing correlation in that. We literally actually moved up in unison. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months in a row. Crypto then grew actually 6, 7 months afterwards. At that point, like really here is when it should have lost its correlation, but going down in correlation even though they were both moving up together, I don't know. And then here the crypto market was going down as a whole at large, during the COVID times. And I guess this is actually pre-COVID, just pre-COVID, June 19th. And then the stock market was moving up. So moving down, moving up, they both corrected with the COVID crash back in March whenever the United States shut down everything, whenever that happened. And then directly correlated, the correlation started to build again when everything started to pump together. So even when it says it's losing correlation, we can see that it actually is correlated. This time here, so this time crypto was moving down while the stock market was moving up. This time we still were correlated, but less correlated than normal. And this happened to be around the time, it looks like the stock market took a dump this time, and crypto didn't really dump, it looks like. That's not what I wanted to do. It just kind of moved sideways, right? Like here, crypto moved down 1 month, and actually the S&P moved, it had a red month as well, but not as intense. And then it continued to drop 2 months later, where crypto actually moved up that following month and then the next month. So crypto dropped 1 month out of these 3 red months here, and then it moved up the next 2 months. That's what we saw. So we've seen it where crypto can move up when the stock market has a correction. We've seen it where crypto can move down even if the stock market is pumping, right? But on a general scale, on a normal basis, you see a more positive correlation than you do a negative one. So with that in mind, and this actually did happen, this loss in correlation did happen during this cycle, so I would say that the chances are higher probably now than they might have ever been, just running with this idea that we could see the stock market correct and crypto do its own thing. We could see that. But generally speaking, what's bad for the stock market is bad for crypto, just generally. That would be a good rule of thumb to go off of. But don't just assume that has to happen, because we've seen it actually where 2 months out of 3, crypto grew as the stock market corrected, right? Anyways, enough of that. Let's get rid of this guy now. I don't think we need it anymore. Let's bring back the RSI. We'll blow this up a little bit. Bam, so it's more visible. I don't mind the monthly RSI. I think it looks really strong, which would then imply that, you know, over the months, over the years, probably or at least another year or so, we're probably going to see some continued growth. This wasn't the best monthly close, not the best look, to be completely fair. We had somewhat of this look happen like on this month here, but this one might have been more bullish. You know, we've seen this kind of look before and still continued upwards, right? We opened the month here, the following month after a candle like this, and dropped down. So could we start the month of August down for the S&P and then finish bullish? Could we even just close next month red? It's possible, but let's look at the weekly. I don't mind the monthly RSI, all that to say. The weekly RSI, however, does show some bearish divergence, which is when we have a higher high, right? Peak here, higher high with higher or a high and then a lower high in the RSI in your indicator, right? So high here, lower high, that is bearish divergence. Generally speaking, you would expect the price to move back at least to where the divergence started, which would be 5,254 points or whatever, you know, this is measured in. And likely most of the time you actually do move a little bit below that. I wonder from a relative low to a high, a little bit below this line. And let's just make it a different color so that it's easier to tell. The 618, the golden ratio, is just below that. So it wouldn't, and then you had support right here as well. It wouldn't be crazy to move down to that 5,215 area, 5,250 area. That might be where you're going right now. However, you did have a very nice little bounce off your 382. If you can continue upwards, let's look at the daily and see how this looks. But this actually could be a better look than I'm giving it credit for. But to be completely fair, this bearish divergence is the main thing that makes me think that you're going to go lower. So let's just see, and it's definitely there. So let's just see about that. Daily basis had a nice little pump yesterday. Above average volume. The daily RSI is not the best looking. I would assume that you're going into your oversold zone, you know, just generally speaking. For anybody who's trying to figure out the RSI, generally speaking, this isn't like in a textbook anywhere. This is just something that I've picked up over my over 7 years of doing technical analysis now. That if you're in the overbought zone, right, you reside in the overbought zone, if you dip below the 50 like that, this rule doesn't apply. It's whenever you start to reside below the 50 like this that you would expect to see the oversold zone, right? After being overbought, and then you break through the 50, not tip it like this. That's support on the 50. I'm talking about breaking through the 50 like we've done here. Before you return to the overbought zone, you probably will interact with the oversold zone. Probably will does not mean certainly will. I would say it's like a 70% chance just based on my experience, maybe more than that, but most of the time you do that. Let's see if we can find other examples. You know, overbought a lot here, bounced off the 50, not a bad thing. Overbought here, finally you actually do reside below the 50 a little bit more, and then you get oversold before you get overbought again, right? Same idea from oversold to overbought. You got to like not just prod the 50, and in this case I would have actually expected maybe that you go down, but you did bounce off your 40. Bouncing off the 40 is a really key thing to do as well. You know, oversold here, prodded above your 50. I would have expected an overbought condition, but maybe you're in an overall kind of bear. Yeah, you're in like a downtrend, so you know there's other things besides just the RSI to go off of. But you didn't get below the 50 into the oversold zone until you saw resistance on it, right? Finding support in this area, being down here for just like a brief bit of time isn't enough, but like residing down here, that's when you finally got oversold. And again, these times that you went a little bit further than the 50, you actually bounced off the 40. Which is a really positive thing to do. Just like rejecting the 60 is a negative thing to do. Overbought, below the 50, oversold, then you could get overbought again, right? It's not perfect. It's not the most perfect thing, right? Like here you oversold, resided above the 50, looking good. You even got above the 60, but you just didn't get overbought. It's not the most perfect thing, but again, it's a generality. So I wouldn't be surprised with this generality in mind that if we were to continue going down on a daily basis. I want to look at this high to low here. Yeah, I mean, that's not the best look, to be completely fair, and I don't like the daily RSI. I want to look at the 3 hour real quick. Hidden bearish divergence. I would say that I expect the SPX to go down. And where would it go down? Again, 5250, 52 itself, 5200, right? 5250. If not, you know, if we keep going up, what would change my mind? You know, get above 5635. get above there, close above there for multiple days, and then I would be, yes, like very near your high. You'd have to get up there before I'm convinced, because really you could go a little bit higher, find resistance here up in this area, and then go down. You could go up to your 786 and go down, but you could even go up here to this area that I'm looking for and then reject there. But it's if you break that area, then it's on to higher highs, right? So. But with the way things look, I would expect that it is moving down. I want to compare it to Bitcoin specifically now. So with the S&P being more correlated to crypto on a monthly basis, let's actually but before we go on to Bitcoin, I know I just said that we should do that, but before we do that, I want to see what it's looking like on a weekly and a daily basis, so that maybe we have a more, not as correlated right now, in kind of negatively correlated actually, which would then imply if the S&P moves down, right, that crypto might move up. S&P moved up for the end of the or for this week so far, and crypto I think has moved down. If we look at total, let's just look at total real quick on a weekly basis. Yeah, it's down. So inverse correlation there a little bit on the daily. Inverse correlation. So yeah, what's bad for the S&P actually might be good for crypto in the near-term basis. Again, the monthly chart for the SPX looks really good. The weekly chart even looks fine, but it would suggest that you have lower prices to go. The daily doesn't look good. So seeing this inverse correlation on the daily and the weekly, expecting it to go down over the days and weeks, but the positive correlation on the monthly, expecting it to go up, the SPX to go up over the months, basically spells out exactly what I would call for, which is that we might see crypto move up over the days and weeks to come. Stock market might be put on pause, it might correct, and then ultimately together they will move up over the months to come, right? Probably to finish out the year and beyond, maybe even beyond, right? This is really powerful. Being overbought in your monthly RSI, right? It's very, very, very powerful. I would expect that implies continuation for at least half a year, if not more, like genuinely more would be my expectation. But enough of all that. Let's compare the SPX now to Bitcoin for realsies. All right, I like to do it like this. I should just go BTC USD. We'll do the all-time history index here. New price scale. What a perfect color. It's orange for BTC. We don't need the RSI or anything like that because we've already gone over all of that. Let's try and get this a little bit more sized up here. So, I mean, very similar notions, right? SPX moving up, having a bull market, and then consolidating, moving up still, but consolidating. BTC moved up a decent bit of this run here, topped off whenever the SPX ended its bull run. Even though it continued to grow, this was essentially a consolidation. This was actually, I think that's what they would call a megaphone right there. That's a broadening top right there. It can be a bullish pattern, but normally you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, it's perfect. Normally 5 legs, and then on that 6th leg you break out either up or down. But being that it's the stock market and we have the US dollar inflating, things will only get more expensive. It's a safe bet that these things will just continue to grow over time, no matter how dramatic the correction. Broadening top, megaphone pattern here. It's a consolidation phase. Even though it did, yes, continue to have higher highs and Bitcoin did not, really what you can see is that its bear market consolidating, megaphone consolidation, right? Around the same time they actually did move up together. However, last cycle, BTC topped off, its bull cycle ended, and you started consolidating here before starting your bear run, while the SPX continued to grow until the actual high of BTC. That's kind of nice. I wonder if we did that. Yeah, I mean, we did do that here, I guess a month later. And this time was 2 months later, actually. So Bitcoin tops off first, huh? That's kind of interesting. SPX tops off afterward. I mean, it didn't even top off there, to be fair. This time, it did top off first. Okay, so that's a monthly look. Let's look at the weekly. All that to say, again, we've already run through the general analysis. I expect SPX to continue to move up. I do expect Bitcoin to move up as well. Bitcoin looks like it's been consolidating. The S&P consolidated for like 3 months, and now it's moving up the last 2 months. Which again, that if it consolidated for a quarter of a year, which that's what that time frame is right there, and it's broken out over the last 2 months, I wouldn't expect over the months it moves down. It's the days and weeks. It's going to have a very short phase of consolidation, but ultimately this is going to continue upwards. That would be my genuine expectation, probably up to this 1618 area, 5,880. It could move down to 5,260, 5,250, 5,200 itself, but 5,800, 5,900 is probably where it would go. And with that, I would think Bitcoin continues to grow as well. Let's look at the weekly. I hope this is what you're looking for. McKink, I think that's McKink. McKink. Sorry, I keep clearing my throat. There's a fire, guys, and I'm sensitive with that kind of stuff apparently, which I hate to say. But that's probably why I'm clearing my throat so much. A lot of smoke in the air. Let's see. Hold up now. I gotta look at something in a second. I'm gonna look at this real quick. Hold on, guys. Hold on. I'm sorry. You won't see what I'm doing, I don't think, but I have to look at this real quick. Somebody just hit me up with something, and I'm curious to see. No, it's fine. Okay. Anyways. Crypto's been consolidating. The S&P moved up, right? It consolidated for a brief period, but the S&P's moved up. I really wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin started to move up while the S&P corrects a little bit, right? They haven't been as positively correlated. We already know that versus the crypto chart itself, which the crypto total market cap is largely dominated by Bitcoin itself. I'm going to stand on a wild limb here and say that I don't think over the coming days and weeks what's bad for the S&P is going to be bad for Bitcoin, because I really don't expect Bitcoin itself to move down too much lower. Like, oh man, why is it so high up there? Come on. Like right now, let's see. It's at, why is it there? It's at $64,645. I don't think it's going to move down. I think it found its low. It's relative low, honestly. And I think the S&P is going to sell off. So at this point, guys, I really just feel like I'm repeating myself because it's basically the same thing as the total market cap, right? But they definitely do share a pretty positive correlation over the longer periods of time. But as of right now, I mean, you can see Bitcoin itself moving up, topped off right here, started consolidating. SPX didn't consolidate until after, which that makes sense. We've seen that kind of correlation. SPX found its low well before Bitcoin did. It bottomed first. It topped second, but it bottomed first. That's just not fair. And then started moving up. They moved up together for a brief amount of time. They moved down together for a brief amount of time, but then Bitcoin continued to correct as the S&P continued to grow. And then as Bitcoin started to grow, actually, that's when the S&P started to dip. So I really do feel comfortable saying that if the S&P drops, that actually might be good for Bitcoin. I wonder if that means that we're seeing stocks selling off for Bitcoin ETFs, for other cryptos and other crypto ETFs or crypto trusts and stuff like that. It might not have that kind of relationship. That might just be something that, you know, I'm throwing out there, but definitely a possibility to consider. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for the video. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.